She had no time for the past. She would be willing to risk everything again to start anew. Anyway, she paused to spread her long, slender hand in front of me, well sculpted, as if designed to show off. It fascinated me. When she stretched out her hand towards me, my heart jumped. It had been a long, cherished dream of mine to hold this hand in my own, to study it to my heart's content. I had seen the lines on it so many times. She used to measure it against my own, making me so confused that I forgot what I was looking for, as if lost in some ancient game of strategy. The brain can transform the flesh. It can make one's very fortune manifest in the lines of one's hands. This is what the people in Shanghai called presence, Tai Ching. Her Tai Ching was indeed unique. Simply by focusing on the palm of her hand, I could see that she was destined to be a curse to all. The star of disaster would obstruct that of good fortune. Worse still, I was unable to keep a calm face. I glanced up at her sweet smile, the smile that had won her the admiration of so many, and felt sadness. One of us spoke. After all, every play starts with the first song. Did I, against my better judgment, say that to comfort her? Or was it she that said it, laughing in her own determination to keep going? Her dreams were something she could not control. She often dreamt of the morning she left home, her heart beating fast, fearful. She had been waiting for the slow dawn to come. She had spent all night standing in the mudflats by the sea, looking to the east, worrying that when the sun might not rise above that distant horizon. She was 7 when her parents died. Ever since then, she had wanted to leave. So many years had passed in the fishing village. Such dark memories should have faded by now. But she still had nightmares and would often wake up in a cold sweat at the most terrifying moment. If I were to make a film about her, I would start with this scene. Hey friends, it's me, the Ebony Otaku, the well-rounded nerd. Today I'm coming to you with another Asian author who I've only actually read one novel from, but I'm hoping there's more out there I haven't discovered. This is from Hong Ying, The Concubine of Shanghai, and I find it to be an absolutely fascinating read. Just a little bit about the author that's, of course, in the front of this book. Can I just say, one of the reasons I was drawn to Asian authors other than being assigned to read Amy Tan in school. And then I was like, oh, this is great. The covers of the books do so well in explaining what's going to happen. And even the inside covers are just, I love printed material and I love it when it's beautiful. But a little bit about the author, in case some of you are not familiar with her. Hong Ying was born to a sailor's family from Chongqing in the Yangtze River in southwest China. An author and poetess, she began her career as a full-time writer in the early 1980s, having studied at Lushan Creative Writing Academy and Fudan University. She is best known in the English-speaking world for her novels, K, The Art of Love. Oh, I've read that, so I have read another book of hers. And Peacock Cries, both published by Marion Boyers, as well as Summer Betrayer. Her autobiography, Daughter of the River, has been translated into 25 different languages, including many here. Her fiction and poetry have won major prizes in Taiwan and Italy, and many of her books have been or are now in the process of being turned into television series and films. She currently lives in Beijing. Now, I don't know if she's still in Beijing because this book was published some years ago. But hey, I wish I'd read that forward before because I could have found more books by her, which I'm now going to pick up because she is absolutely lovely. One of the things I love about Hong Ying's writing style is it's direct but delicate. She's going to tell you exactly what's going on, but you're not going to feel terrible while reading it. If you've watched any of my videos before, you'll know that I have a can't talk. It's the lipstick. That's why I can't talk. I have a fascination with Chinese culture. A lot of people in America, and I don't want to generalize, but people get fascinated with Asia. Asia's a continent, and there's a lot of cultures that make up Asian, just like Africa. Ooh, I love Africa. There's a lot of countries in Africa, a lot of countries in South America. And each one of those nations has their own distinct history and set of mores that when you study them out and see what the countries were and what they become, it's interesting to draw those lines through history to how the present was able to happen. And I just find the study of that absolutely fascinating. And I love writing like this because these stories of women, especially out of Asia, Africa, and even to a certain extent, certain parts of Europe, like Old England, these stories of women going through and what they did to persevere in societies that honestly weren't designed for them to succeed without the aid of a man. I can do nothing but sit in awe. And when you dive into worlds like this, you kind of have to step back from preconceived Western middle class notions of what's okay and what's not okay, how people should behave and how they shouldn't behave, because they are in extraordinary circumstances that most of us will never have to be in. It's just the reality of the world they live in. You're either going to be someone's first, second, third, fourth, 10th wife, and you better have a son, otherwise you're worthless, or you're going to go off and work in a brothel or be part of someone's harem if you're lucky. That was if you were lucky. I mean, God forbid you don't get any husband, let alone a terrible one. And then who knows what is going to happen to you. So that's kind of what we're living in. And when I read these stories, they remind me of how strong women are, how proud I am to be a woman, that I can make it in the world, that I can find a way, that I can be the water that carves the path through the stone. And that's what our main character in The Concubine of Shanghai, Cassia, is able to do with her life. Now, before we dive into the whole synopsis, spoiler warning, of course, I'm not going to do the whole book like I did with the last On Chi Men books. I want you to go read this one, and it's super good. And the ending in this one is just like, oh, so I'm not going to spoil that. But then also, don't forget, I still have the Please Get Me More Subscribers contest going on. When I get to that 500, I promise you, 500 across the YouTubes, 500 on the Twitters, and 500 on the Instagram. The Ebony Otaku, have a US address, and I will be sending out nice nerdy prizes. As you can see, yes, my Christmas decorations are already up, but I have lots of nerdiness to spread, and I would love to spread some of that nerdiness to you. So please like, comment, and subscribe. So let's go ahead and talk about our heroine. So our central character in The Concubine of Shanghai is Cassia, which when I first read this novel, I had to read that a few times because Cassia didn't sound like a Chinese name to me. Not that I know all Chinese names, not purporting to do that, but I was like, that is an interesting name. But yeah, her name's Cassia, and I think it's beautiful, and I could be saying it wrong, but she is not unusual in the world of this novel and in the world of China 100 years ago, 80 years ago. And I don't know if it's true today, but she was the daughter of poor fisherwoman. Parents died. She was left in the care of an aunt. Aunt didn't want to take care of her and sold her to a brothel in Shanghai. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, ooh. Now, I could tell you some stories because y'all know, I mean, I'm pretty open. In my personal life, I do a lot of mission work and work with people in impoverished areas who are going through things that if I told you what these things were, they would spoil your entire decade. There's a lot of evil in the world, but there's also a lot of desperation that causes that evil to flourish. And I personally recognize that. Not condoning it, but I recognize why it exists. It's very easy to just condemn the adults. And I'm trying to be very careful in how I say this because what her aunt did in the context of the story, it's still wrong, But the why behind it is like, if I was in the same situation, what would I have done? I'm poor. Everyone's poor. No one has enough food. No one can feed their own family. Now I have this extra mouth to feed. And oh, by the way, it's a girl. Had she been a boy, they probably would have kept her. Anyhow, but I got this extra, branch in my family that I didn't ask for. What am I supposed to do? I need money. Brothels be brotheling. So here, take her. There are some concepts that as a Westerner are very hard to wrap your brain around. Because to me and my sensibilities, that's horrifying. But I've also never been a poor person in the middle of nowhereville with no options and no ability to raise a child. So nothing of Cassia's life in the beginning is anything that it should have been. Her life probably would have been completely different had her parents lived. Fortunately for Cassia, she was an unusual beauty in the terms of this world. For one thing, her feet were not bound. She's still living in a time where women bound the feet of the women in the household. And to be very clear, I mean, I'm fascinated by foot binding too, but that was a woman's tradition. That was women doing it to women. Foot binding was proof that you were going to be a daughter-in-law who was obedient, could bear the pain of childbirth, and would do whatever it took to show your filial piety and be a good wife in the household. That's what it meant. And it also meant that you were a woman who was too good for actual work. You were to be taken care of. Even if it was by the poorest of farmers, your place was in the women's quarters of the household, and it was the man's job to provide for you because your feet wouldn't let you just flit about. But Cassia had unbound feet. And I found this interesting as well. Little children, plug your ears. She had unbound breast as well. And this is something I did not know about, not in Asian culture anyway. I knew about it in some different portions of African cultures. But there was a tradition of tying back a woman's breast so they wouldn't get overly large. Missed that boat personally. But if you look at the stylization of a lot of the royalty paintings that came out of ancient China, or if you look at the images of geisha, what we consider sexualization, it's not the same as it was in those days and in those countries. The more you covered and the more you kept a mystery, the more alluring the woman was. But I think that also kind of backfired because we're also living in a world where huge brothels exist. So let's explain this brothel situation. So Cassia gets sold to a brothel, and in Western culture, brothel means dingy, dungy, drugged in. It's not a good place typically. It is a house that is illicit and of ill repute, and only people of bad intentions go there. It's just that's the culture of it. Well, back in the day in China, and not just China, but all over the world, really, this isn't just a China thing. Brothels were different. Still a house of ill repute, but accepted ill repute. Because you have to remember, this isn't a culture where men are allowed to have multiple wives and concubines. So if he wants to go out spreading his seed, he's allowed. This is not a judgment. It just is. All right. Just accept the world the way it is, and it will help you enjoy the novel more. But the men were allowed to just, go out and do what they want, especially men who had power and connection, businessmen, politicians, gangsters, men in power. They had beautiful wives, lots of sons, homes, lots of concubines. And when they got tired of one wife or concubine, you just go out and get another one. That's just how it worked. And the way these brothels were set up, they were not dingy, dirty places. They were beautiful. And they weren't just places to, go do the thing. They were places of the arts. These women were required to be able to recite poetry. They were typically semi-educated. They could read and write, so they could read the classics aloud. They could play instruments. They were artisans, and on top of being just this perfect performer, nice to look at, serve me tea and cakes, they could do the thing. That was a bonus. But oftentimes, even though men were coming to these places, for the thing, they were also coming to be entertained as guests to a regal party. And they could put on elaborate meetings and shows in these places as shows of wealth. And actually, brothels at one point in China adopted the noble habit of naming your daughters after flowers. There's another book we reread that takes place further back in China from An Chi Min, where the title character is named Peony. Noble families would often name their daughters after flowers so that families looking for daughters-in-law could know by their name, because they're not going to see them, could know by their name, this is a virtuous, pure maiden. But once brothels started doing it, then the fashion fell away for naming daughters after flowers, because then that meant they were going to grow up to be, at best a little sister. You can interpret that however you want. But Cassia, being unique in this environment, that her feet weren't bound, the time for binding her feet long passed. They did that when you were like 3, 4, 5 years old. So she's too old for that to happen. And then, of course, tying back the memories, that wasn't going to happen either. So she starts out as a servant, but she happens to be real pretty. Like you ever see people, I'm not going to name any names, but you ever see a celebrity that isn't conventionally beautiful, but they have a unique look, and it's just like, whoa, that person doesn't look like other people. I want to look at them more. She was like that. She is beautiful, but she has a unique beauty to where she is in the world. And, from a young age, she's smart. She understands quickly, I need to be able to navigate this world. And if I'm going to be stuck here, I'm going to figure out how to make the most use out of every part of this system. The system's not for her. The system wasn't designed for Cassia. But when she reaches the age of maturity to where she can start entertaining guests, she's still a servant, actually, but a huge mob boss in Shanghai takes a liking to her. And he's the one who gets the flower, if you know what I mean. But she's intelligent, she's clever, she'll talk back, she's fun to be around, and they have a whole relationship. He's got wives. He got many wives. He got concubines. But when they get bored with a woman, they go find another one. And she uses this to her advantage because she was treated so poorly coming up, not just, being sold into a brothel, but it's not like the brothel treated her nice. She was a servant when she came in. Now, we're not even going to say servant. She was a whole slave. When she came into that environment, they weren't awesome to her, but now the biggest mobster in Shanghai is her benefactor and lover. That changes things. And an incident occurs and he ends up getting killed. But homegirl beds the next mob boss and his senior lackey. Now, I'm going to need you to put all your Western notions over there in a box. Just see that box? Just put them over there. Put yourself in this position. Young girl sold to a brothel. No options for education. No options for supporting herself. What am I going to do to just live? To live and survive as comfortably as possible. I would love to sit here and say, with my Western upbringing and Western education, not just Western, modern, because modern girls all over the world have different choices to what women had 50, 100 years ago. These things are very recent in human history. There are choices I'm never going to have to make because I had the benefit of being born in America at the time I was born. So I have privilege that way. I have the privilege of being a modern American woman. This isn't where this girl is. She is in a society that is against her. And she takes the stand that if misogyny is going to exist, if the subjugation of women is going to exist, I'm going to use it to my full advantage. I am unbound in all the areas. It is my body. I can do what I want with it. And if this is my ticket to having a decent life, I'm going to use it if y'all are dumb enough to fall for it. And I can't be mad at her. Now, the reason the book is called The Concubine of Shanghai is she sets out to be a celebrated woman. There's actually a competition that goes on amongst the brothels of which courtesan is the most. I guess is the. I mean, it's not exactly a beauty contest. She be popping contest. I don't even know how to phrase it. But she wants more than that. She wants to make a mark. She wants to do something with her life. And eventually she breaks out of just being a concubine, of being a brothel girl, and forms her own theater troupe and becomes a real businesswoman. And she has a troupe of people that she's taking care of, and all of the skills she learned as an artist in the brothel she's able to put to use in her theater troupe. And her theater troupe specializes in telling the old tales and the old songs, you know, that were sung by the river, that were sung in the country, in the rice paddies. And it feels so homey to people, and they take comfort in listening to it. And they're amateurs, they're not the best, but she has the backing of the most powerful gangsters in Shanghai who can help fund her troupe, who can help give her that comfortable life. The only thing she has to give them in return is her entire body, spirit, and soul. This is not the hardest book to read because it's very well written. Thematically, it's very easy to follow. What's hard about it is putting yourself in Cassia's position. It's very easy to read a novel like this and just get real full of judgment real fast. And oh, BTW, there's some parts in here, and this ain't a book for children to read. I mean, I'm just letting you know. But I respect a character like Cassia. She took inventory of the life she was given, of the hand she was dealt, and decided, I'm going to play my cards the best way I can. And I'm not going to worry about people judging me. I'm not going to worry about, what it's going to do to my family name. I mean, my family sold me to a brothel, so who cares about the family name? I'm not going to be concerned about other people in my society who might not appreciate the path that I have been forced to choose. Because remember, she was someone's daughter. She could have grown up to have a normal life. She could have just been a wife of a farmer or a fisherman. That could have been her life. But when her parents died, that was taken. And I think novels like this are important because they remind you not to just cast dispersion and judgment too quickly. Every person you see who is making decisions today that you might not agree with, that's somebody's daughter. That's somebody's son. They had an entire existence before today happened. And everything that happened yesterday led to today. There were a lot of graduallys in their life that led to the current suddenly. And we have to pay attention to those. Fortunately for Cassia, that was my dog. Fortunately for Cassia, she's able to make a life for herself. Whether you agree or disagree with the choices she makes, she is able to build a life for herself. Everyone's not that fortunate. Everyone doesn't make it to the point of building a life. A lot of people succumb. Every girl she knew at that brothel didn't make it out of the brothel. And once they become too old to be brothel girls, what do? She made plans. She figured her life out. She did what she had to do. And I can respect someone doing what they have to do. Now, I think for me, that was a pretty quick video. 20 something minutes. Okay. Woo, I did good. So please like, comment, and subscribe. And of course, I have many more, many more books to talk about, many more anime to talk about. I think the next anime I'm going to talk about is Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. One, I feel like dressing up. And two, it's another one of those like women's empowerment stories that I kind of like and I'm into. So yeah, I think that'll be next. So thanks so much for joining me. Let's talk about it down below. And if you can recommend any other authors you'd like me to review, I would love to hear about them.